The night was cold, and the wind moved across the high cliff like a silent warning. The sky above was dark purple, filled with two alien moons that gave a soft glow to the rocks far below the cliff. A deep valley was covered in glowing fog that looked like a dangerous sea. On the very edge of the cliff stood an alien woman named Lyra. Her long silver hair blew wildly behind her as she stared down at the endless drop. Her breath shook as if every second was heavier than the last. Her eyes were red, not from the cold, but from hours of crying. She looked like someone who had lost everything. Someone who had no reason to continue. Lyra stepped closer to the edge, small stones falling from under her feet and disappearing into the fog below. Her heart felt empty, her mind replaying every painful moment of the last few months. Her people had turned their backs on her. Her mate had died in a war she never wanted. Her clan blamed her for his death. They said she brought weakness. They said she brought bad luck. They banished her. And now she stood alone on this cold cliff, believing the only peace left was down in the fog. But just when she leaned forward, ready to let go, she heard a quiet voice behind her. It was soft, shaking, but full of meaning. Don't do it. Lyra froze. Her body stiffened. She didn't turn around. She didn't breathe. She wasn't expecting any voice. Footsteps approached slowly. Careful, respectful, almost scared. The voice came again, calm but trembling. Please, don't jump. Lyra finally turned her head a little. Not enough to face him fully, just enough to see a shape standing behind her. It was a human man, tall, tired-looking, with messy brown hair and soft eyes. A traveler, a stranger, someone who shouldn't be standing here on her alien planet. His name was Evan, but she didn't know that yet. She only saw a human who looked more frightened than she was. He lifted his hands gently, showing he carried no weapon. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly. "I just don't want you to fall." Lyra wanted to tell him to go away. She wanted to tell him he didn't understand anything, but when she tried to speak, her voice broke. "Why do you care?" she whispered, barely loud enough to hear. Evan took one slow step forward. His eyes never left her. He looked at her like she wasn't a monster, like she wasn't a burden, because no one, he said, deserves to end alone. The wind pushed harder. Rocks slid under her feet. Evan saw it and stepped closer quickly. Too quickly. Careful. He shouted. The ground under Lyra cracked. A sharp line spreading under her boots. Her heart jumped in fear for the first time that night. The rocks suddenly gave way. Lyra slipped forward, her foot losing balance, and Evan lunged without thinking. His arm wrapped around her wrist just in time. Their bodies jerked dangerously toward the edge. For a moment, both hung over the deadly drop. Lyra gasped, her breath caught in panic. Evan gritted his teeth, using every bit of strength to pull her back toward the cliff. "Hold on," he said, voice breaking under pressure. Lyra stared at him, wide-eyed, shocked by how hard he was fighting to save her. He wasn't her clan. He wasn't her friend. He wasn't even her species, yet here he was risking his life for hers. Evan pulled her back onto solid ground, both falling to their knees, breathing hard. Lyra looked down at his hands, still holding her arms tightly. She didn't push him away. She didn't speak. She just stared, confused and overwhelmed. Evan slowly let go and whispered again, "Please, don't do this." Lyra looked at him fully now, tears shining in her eyes, and for the first time in many months. She felt seen. She felt heard. She felt like maybe, just maybe, this human's whisper had saved her life. The night wind blew softly around them as the first spark of their connection began in silence. And far below, the glowing fog shifted, as if watching what fate had just changed. The wind slowly calmed after the terrifying moment on the cliff. Evan and Lyra both sat on the cold ground, breathing hard. The night around them felt quieter now, as if the danger had paused for a little while. Lyra kept her eyes lowered, embarrassed and shaken. Evan stayed a few steps away, giving her space but never looking away. His worried expression showed he wasn't going to leave her alone in this darkness. Lyra wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to hold her broken pieces together. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the cold wind passing through the tall rock pillars. Finally, Evan stood up slowly and said in a gentle voice, "There's a small cave nearby. Safer than here. We should get out of the wind." Lyra didn't answer. But she didn't resist when he offered his hand to help her stand. Her steps were weak, but she followed him. The cave was not large, but it was warm enough. Soft purple light from glowing stones inside made the walls shimmer. Evan set down a small human device that produced a warm orange flame. The soft firelight made Lyra's silver hair shine like metal and shadow at the same time. Evan sat on one side of the fire, keeping distance so she wouldn't feel trapped. Lyra sat with her knees pulled close to her chest. Her eyes kept drifting toward the cave entrance as if she still feared the world outside. Evan watched her carefully and spoke softly. "You don't have to talk. But if you want to, I'm here." For a long time, she said nothing. Then her voice finally came, weak, tired, wounded. "My clan. They cast me out." Evan didn't interrupt. He listened with the kind of patience that she hadn't felt from anyone in years. Lyra's fingers trembled as she traced circles on the cave floor. "My mate died in the last border war," she whispered. "He was brave, he was strong, he tried to protect our home. But he never came back." Her voice shook, as if every memory was a blade cutting her again. "When they brought his body back," she continued, "the elders blamed me. They said I weakened him. They said I distracted him from his duty." She paused, her breath hitching. "I tried to defend myself. But no one listened. No one believed me. Even his family turned their faces away." Evan frowned, pain showing in his eyes even though the story wasn't his. "That's not your fault," he said quietly. Lyra looked up, confused by how quickly he defended her. "You don't even know me," she whispered. Evan nodded slowly. "I don't. But I know grief. I know what it feels like when people blame you for something you didn't do." Lyra stared at the fire. "When they banished me," she said, "I wandered for weeks. No food, no shelter. Only memories, and every day. It felt heavier, like I was fading." Her voice cracked. "And tonight, I finally felt nothing left." Evan swallowed hard, his own voice lowered. "I lost someone too. My sister." Lyra's eyes widened slightly. "She died in the same war," he added. "A stray attack. Wrong place, wrong time, for a moment. Two broken worlds connected through one shared wound." Lyra blinked slowly, her expression softening for the first time. "You carry pain too," she said quietly. He nodded. "But I keep going. Because someday someone might need me." Lyra looked at him. Truly looked this time, not just with fear or shock, but with a small spark of understanding before she could speak. A low growl echoed from outside the cave. The sound was deep. Hungry, close. Lyra's body stiffened instantly. "That beast," she whispered. "It followed us." Evan stood up and moved toward the entrance. His jaw tightened. "Stay behind me," he said. Lyra stared at him in disbelief. "You would fight for me again?" Evan didn't look back. "If something wants you," he said quietly, "it has to go through me first." A new fear rose in the cave. But this time, Lyra wasn't facing it alone, and the silent bond between human and alien began to grow stronger in the shadows. Asterisk, a cold silence filled the cave after the growl echoed through the night. Lyra's heart started to beat faster. Her hands trembled as she looked toward the entrance. Evan stood tall, shoulders tight, eyes fixed on the darkness outside. The warm fire behind them flickered nervously, as if even the flames were afraid of what was coming. The night outside was too quiet, too still. The kind of silence that meant something deadly was close. Lyra stepped back, her mind filling with memories of tales her people used to tell. "It's a night hunter," she whispered. "They smell fear." And loneliness. Evan didn't move from the entrance. His body blocked the cold air blowing into the cave. He didn't have alien strength or alien senses. But he had something else, courage that was far bigger than his fear. Another low growl rolled across the rocks. Louder this time, closer, the sound vibrated in Lyra's chest, making her breath stop for a second. "It's coming," she said in a shaking voice. Evan nodded once. "Stay behind me." No matter what, he stepped forward onto the rocky ground outside the cave. The purple moonlight touched his face, showing calm eyes but a tense jaw. Lyra followed quietly, stopping just a few steps behind him. Close enough to help, but far enough to stay safe. The forest was dark. Huge trees, shaped like twisted claws, reached upward. Their glowing vines swayed slowly, lighting tiny patches of ground. But between those lights, shadows moved. A pair of yellow eyes appeared first, bright, hungry, watching. The eyes blinked once, slowly, as if studying its prey. Then the beast crawled into the open. Its body was huge, covered in black scales that reflected the moon. Its teeth were long and sharp, like broken glass. Its claws dug into the ground with each step. The night hunter was twice Evan's size, and stronger than any creature he had ever seen. Lyra felt her throat tighten. "It kills anything alone." "Anything weak," she whispered. Evan didn't turn back. "Good thing we're not alone," he replied quietly. The beast lowered itself like a panther ready to strike. Evan tightened his grip on a sharp rock he picked up earlier. It was a small weapon, almost useless. But it was all he had. The beast leaped. Its roar shook the trees. Lyra gasped, but Evan moved fast, much faster than she expected. He jumped to the side, the beast's claws grazing his arm, leaving a sharp, burning cut. Evan landed hard on the ground, but rolled back to his feet. "Evan?" Lyra cried. "I'm okay," he shouted, even though the pain in his arm was growing. The beast turned its head toward Lyra. Sensing her fear, it growled and stepped forward, ready to attack her next, but Evan shouted loudly, slamming a rock against another to make noise. "Come at me." The beast roared and charged toward him instead. Evan dodged again, barely missing its jaws. The earth shook each time the creature landed. Lyra's hands began to glow softly, her alien power reacting to fear. She stepped forward, eyes glowing bright blue. "Evan, move," she shouted. Evan dropped low to the ground. The beast jumped over him straight into Lyra's blinding light. A shockwave of white-blue brightness burst from her palms. The beast screamed in confusion, its eyes burning from the sudden light. It staggered back, shaking its massive head. Blinded and furious, Evan didn't waste the chance. He grabbed a sharp stone and struck the beast's leg. The creature roared in pain, stumbling backward into the glowing roots. For a moment, everything froze. Only heavy breathing filled the air. The beast let out one final growl before retreating into the darkness, its yellow eyes fading deep into the forest. Evan dropped the rock and leaned against the cave wall. Breathing hard, Lyra ran to him, her voice filled with panic. "You're hurt." "It's just a scratch," he said. Though his arm was bleeding more than he wanted to admit, Lyra gently touched his wound, her fingertips glowing faintly as a healing warmth spread across his skin. "You saved me again," she said softly. Evan looked at her with a tired smile. "You saved me too. We did this together for the first time." Lyra smiled, small, fragile, but real, in the dark forest. Under the strange moons, a bond was forming, one neither expected, and one both desperately needed. But danger was not over. The beast had retreated, not surrendered. And something else was watching them from deeper in the woods. Asterisk. The night was still deep when Evan and Lyra stepped out of the cave again. The cold wind had quieted after the beast's retreat, but the silence now felt heavier, almost watchful. Evan tied a piece of cloth around his arm where the creature had scratched him. It hurt, but he didn't show it. Lyra kept her glowing eyes on the dark forest. Her senses alert. "We can't stay here," she said softly. "The night hunter will return." "And it won't be alone next time," Evan nodded. "Then let's move before it finds us again." They began walking into the forbidden forest. A place Lyra had always avoided. The ground was covered in soft blue moss, glowing gently under the moonlight. Strange tall plants twisted like spirals, breathing mist into the air. Every sound felt sharper, every crack of a branch, every whisper of wind, every hidden shift in the shadows. Evan followed close behind Lyra, who guided him through narrow paths only her people knew. "You know this place well," he said quietly. Lyra did not turn. "My mother used to bring me here before the elders declared it forbidden," she answered. She believed the forest protected those with honest hearts. Her voice softened when she spoke of her mother, but after she died, everything changed. Evan listened carefully, sensing the pain behind her quiet words. "I'm sorry," he said gently. Lyra didn't reply, but her shoulders relaxed a little, as if his words eased something inside her. They walked deeper, the forest growing darker around them. Suddenly, a faint glow appeared above, tiny floating lights drifting between the trees like fireflies. Evan stared in awe. "What are those?" Lyra looked up, her eyes softening. "Forest spirits. Harmless, they guide lost travelers sometimes." One small, glowing orb floated near Evan's face. Lighting his tired eyes, Lyra watched him watch the light. And for the first time, she felt something warm in her chest, feeling she thought she'd lost forever. But the peaceful moment didn't last long. A distant howl cut through the trees. Light and sharp, Lyra stopped walking instantly. "That is not a beast. That is a patrol," Evan frowned. "A patrol. From your people." Lyra nodded slowly. "Warriors from my clan. They are searching the valley tonight." A tremble of fear passed through her voice. "They cannot see me," she whispered. "They would drag me back." Or worse, Evan placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Then we stay hidden," he said. "I won't let anyone hurt you." Lyra looked at him long and quietly, as if trying to understand why a human cared so much. Evan pulled her behind a cluster of glowing roots. They crouched low, breath quiet, as footsteps approached, heavy, armored, disciplined. Lyra's heart raced. "They are elite guards," she whispered. "They follow orders without question through the vines." Evan saw 3 tall alien warriors in silver armor. Their helmets glowed faintly, and each carried long spears crackling with electric energy. They moved like shadows, fast and precise. The leader lifted a scanner that emitted a sharp pulse of blue light. "They're looking for something," Evan whispered. Lyra swallowed hard. "They're looking for me." The warriors stopped just meters away. The leader spoke in a deep voice. "She has been seen near the cliffs. The elders command we bring her back alive." Evan looked at Lyra. "That doesn't sound like hatred." Lyra shook her head. "No. Something is wrong. They never cared before." The warriors moved again. Disappearing deeper into the forest, Evan waited until their footsteps vanished completely before speaking. "Lyra, maybe they're not trying to harm you." Lyra looked away. "You don't know my clan." But Evan did not back down. "I know pain changes people. Maybe it changed them too." Lyra said nothing. But her eyes held a new confusion, new storm building inside her. They continued walking, but now their steps were slower and quieter. The forest grew thicker, vines hanging like curtains of light. Strange whispers echoed from far away. Evan felt the tension rise again. Where are we going? Lyra pointed ahead, to the place where the forest opens. There is a safe path there, but before they reached it, they heard voices again, this time closer than before, urgent and fearful. Then they heard a sentence that froze Lyra in place. Find the human. He must not escape with her. Evan's eyes widened. They're hunting me too. Lyra's heart dropped. Something much bigger than her pain was happening, and the forest was no longer the biggest threat between them. And the truth. Lyra stood frozen between the glowing trees. Her breath trapped in her chest after hearing the warrior's words. Evan moved beside her slowly, watching her reaction carefully. Her eyes were wide, full of fear and confusion. They're hunting you. And me? She whispered, her voice barely a sound. Evan placed his hand lightly on her shoulder. We'll figure out why, he said calmly, even though his pulse raced. The forest around them felt alive with tension. Every leaf seemed to listen. Every vine seemed to tremble. The floating lights drifted quietly, as if they, too, sensed danger. Lyra took a shaky breath and began moving again, guiding Evan deeper into the hidden paths. We cannot let them find us in the open, she said softly. There's a place ahead. A clearing where the forest hides its sound. Evan raised a brow. Hides its sound. Lyra nodded, yes. Sound cannot escape it. Warriors cannot hear us if we speak inside. After several minutes of walking through tight vines and glowing roots, they reached a wide circular clearing. The air inside felt thick, quiet, almost heavy. Even the wind outside didn't enter. It was like stepping into a silent world. Evan looked around in awe. So we can talk freely here. Lyra nodded, yes. This place was sacred to my mother. She walked to the center, her silver hair shining under the faint light. Evan followed slowly. You said your clan hated you. He said, but they sounded different tonight. Lyra lowered her eyes. I don't trust them, she whispered, after what they said when my mate died. I cannot. But Evan shook his head gently. I don't think they're trying to kill you. Lyra's voice cracked. Then why hunt me? Why hunt you? Evan stepped closer so she could hear the calmness in his voice. Maybe they realized they were wrong, he said softly. Maybe something changed after you left. Lyra looked away, her jaw tight. They never change. Not for me, before Evan could answer. Soft footsteps rustled in the bushes. Lyra tensed instantly, pulling Evan behind a large glowing root. Evan crouched beside her, heart pounding. The footsteps grew louder. Then familiar voices echoed across the clearing. It was her clan warriors again, but this time they were arguing. She must be found, one said sharply. She is in danger, from the shadows. Another asked, or from herself. The leader shook his head. No. From the one manipulating us? Lyra's breath caught sharply. Manipulating? She whispered, confused. Evan touched her arm, signaling her to stay quiet and listen. The leader continued. The elders now know the truth. The enemy twisted our minds during the war. They made us see her as a curse. When she was not, Lyra's eyes widened with shock. They blamed me because someone forced them to. Evan nodded slowly. It wasn't their hatred. It was influence. The warriors kept talking, revealing everything Lyra never knew. The clan regrets what happened, the leader said. The elders want to bring her back. They want to protect her now. Then why hunt the human? Another asked. A long silence. Then the leader said, because the enemy fears, he will learn the truth. He was never supposed to meet her. Evan frowned. I was never supposed to meet you. Lyra shifted, confused and overwhelmed. What truth? What do you have to do with me? Before Evan could answer, the warriors moved again, walking deeper into the forest. Their footsteps faded, leaving Lyra and Evan alone in the clearing. Lyra stepped out slowly, her legs trembling. They didn't hate me, she whispered. They were controlled. They didn't know what they were doing to me. Her voice cracked into a sob she tried to hide. Evan stepped forward gently. Lyra, you didn't deserve any of that, he said softly. She shook her head. All those years. All that pain. And it was a lie. She looked up at Evan, tears shining in her glowing eyes. My clan. They never wanted me dead. Evan nodded. They want to protect you. Lyra took a trembling step toward him. And you. They fear you because you know too much. Evan smiled faintly. Then, I guess I'm part of this story now. Lyra felt her heart shift something new, something warm, something strong. But the forest suddenly trembled as a distant roar echoed, not the beast from before. Something bigger, something darker, something that didn't belong here. Lyra turned toward the sound, fear rising again, the enemy that controlled my clan. It followed us, she whispered. Evan stood beside her. Then we face it together, he said firmly, and for the first time. Lyra believed she was not alone, not anymore, not with him. The ground trembled again, louder this time, carrying a deep, unnatural vibration through the forbidden forest. Lyra's breath caught in her throat as the trees around them shivered as if alive and afraid. Evan stepped forward, placing himself between her and the direction of the sound. His eyes focused, his jaw tight. What is that? He asked quietly. Lyra shook her head, her voice barely stable. It is not a beast. Not a patrol. This is something older. The forest lights dimmed. The glowing moss turned dull. Even the floating orbs drifted away quickly. As if running, Evan tightened his fist, ready for whatever came. A shadow moved between the trees, slow, deliberate. It was too tall to be a creature and too quiet to be a machine. The air around it seemed to bend, as if the darkness itself obeyed it. Lyra stepped back, fear filling her glowing eyes. No. It found us, she whispered. Evan looked at her sharply. Lyra, what is that thing? She swallowed hard. The Mindweaver. The one that twisted my clan's thoughts. It feeds on fear. It hides in shadows. It can control memories. Evan felt cold run through him. So it made your clan hate you. Lyra nodded, and it wanted me dead. Because I was resistant to its power, the shadow grew clearer, forming into a tall, thin creature with long limbs and a face hidden by darkness. Purple smoke swirled around it like living fog. Its voice slipped through the trees soft. Sharp, almost whisper-like. You escaped. Little Lyra. Lyra froze, every part of her shaking. The creature stepped closer, its eyes glowing faint red. And you brought. A human, it hissed. A mind too strong to bend. Dangerous. Evan stepped forward, unarmed but fearless. You hurt her, he said. You hurt her clan. You twisted everything. The Mindweaver tilted its head slowly. Humans. Always so brave. Always so foolish. Before Evan could react, a sharp wave of dark energy shot toward him. Lyra screamed. Evan, move. He jumped aside just in time, the blast striking a tree. Splitting it open like a knife through cloth, the creature moved too fast for its size. Appearing inches from Evan in a blink, Evan tried to strike with a rock. But the Mindweaver pushed him back with invisible force. Slamming him into the ground, Lyra ran toward him. Her hands glowing bright blue. Let him go. She shouted. The creature turned its glowing eyes toward her. You cannot fight me, lost child. Lyra's light flickered as fear tightened her chest. The Mindweaver's mist began creeping toward her feet. Wrapping around her like chains, she gasped. Struggling as it pulled her down, her voice shook it. "It's inside my mind." Evan forced himself up despite the pain. "Lyra, look at me," he shouted. She lifted her eyes weakly, trapped between memories and fear. "You're not alone anymore," he said. Louder this time. "Fight it." Lyra closed her eyes, tears running down her cheeks. She remembered being blamed, being hated, being called weak. But then she remembered Evan's hand grabbing her from the cliff. Evan standing in front of the beast. Evan believing in her when even she didn't. Her eyes snapped open, glowing brighter than ever before. A wave of blue light burst from her hands. Blasting the dark mist away, the Mindweaver staggered back, hissing violently. "Impossible. Your heart was broken. You should have been easy to break." Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady for the first time. "Not anymore," she whispered. "Not while he's here." The creature roared, sending a massive shockwave at both of them. Evan grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her behind a rock. Debris flew everywhere. Trees cracked. The ground shook. Evan squeezed her hand. "We need your power." "All of it." Lyra nodded. Fear still there, but now mixed with something powerful hope. Together they stood, light forming around Lyra's hands. Evan bracing beside her, the Mindweaver lunged. Lyra unleashed a blinding surge of blue-white energy. Evan charged forward at the same time, aiming for the creature's heart-like core hidden in the smoke. The explosion of light and shadow shook the entire forest. Warriors from Lyra's clan hearing the blast raced toward the clearing with shock on their faces. But when the dust settled, Lyra and Evan stood side by side, while the Mindweaver fell back into the shadows. Wounded, furious, not defeated yet, Lyra breathed hard. "It will return," she whispered. Evan nodded. "Then we'll be ready," and behind them, her clan finally arrived. Watching the human and the outcast girl stand united against darkness itself, the blast of light faded slowly. Leaving the forbidden forest trembling, blue sparks drifted through the air like falling stars. The Mindweaver's shadowy form dragged itself into the dark trees. Hissing in pain, its final whisper echoed before disappearing. "This is not over." But for the first time in years, Lyra wasn't afraid of what would return. Not when she stood with Evan, his hand still wrapped around hers. Their breaths shaking but united. The clearing filled with the noise of footsteps. Her clan's warriors arrived, silver armor shining under the purple moons. They stopped at the edge of the clearing, shocked by what they saw. Lyra standing strong, glowing with power, and beside her, a human man standing like her equal. The leader stepped forward, lowering his spear. His voice was full of conflict, shame, respect, fear. "Lyra, we thought you were lost." Lyra looked at them with tired eyes. "You made me lost," she replied quietly. Several warriors lowered their heads, guilt heavy on their faces. Evan moved slightly closer to her, ready to defend her if needed, but Lyra raised a calming hand. "Let them speak," she murmured. The leader took a long breath. "The elders know the truth now. The Mindweaver twisted our memories. It made us see you as a curse. It fed on pain and fear." Lyra's jaw tightened. "And you let it," she whispered. The leader flinched. "Yes. We failed you for a moment." Silence sat between them like a heavy stone. Warriors shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to face the woman they had forced into exile. Another warrior stepped forward, her voice emotional. "When your mate died, we blamed you because the Mindweaver made us feel anger we couldn't understand. We see it now." Too late, Lyra looked away, fighting the storm in her heart. "I lived in darkness because of you," she said quietly. "I stood on the cliff because of you." Evan squeezed her hand gently, silently reminding her she wasn't alone this time. The clan bowed their heads together. A deep gesture of apology. We beg forgiveness. And we beg you to return, the leader said softly. The elders want to welcome you home. Lyra's eyes filled with a soft pain. Home is not a place, she whispered. It is where someone finally sees you. She looked at Evan, and in her eyes was a softness. A warmth, a trust he had earned through every danger. Evan felt his heart tighten as she stepped closer to him. Evan, you saved me on the cliff. You fought beside me. You believed in me when even I didn't believe in myself. Her voice trembled with emotion. You became my light when everything else went dark. Evan felt his own throat tighten. You're stronger than you think, Lyra. I just helped you see it. The clan watched silently as something powerful passed between them. Something they couldn't understand, but deeply respected. Lyra turned back to her people. I will return, she said slowly, but not as a broken exile. Not as someone you pity. The leader straightened. Then how will you return? Lyra lifted her chin with a quiet strength, as someone who chooses her own path, she said. And I choose him by my side. Gasps rippled through the warriors, but none protested. They had just watched a human fight a creature that nearly destroyed. Their entire clan, they could not deny the bond that had formed. The clan bowed deeply to both Lyra and Evan in respect. But Evan looked confused. Lyra, what happens now? He asked softly. She smiled gently. We go somewhere. Back to where it all began, she led him through the glowing forest. Past trembling trees and quiet vines, they moved together, step by step, until they reached the cliffs, the same cliff where everything almost ended. The valley below glowed under the rising morning light. The wind carried a soft warmth this time, no longer cold and sharp.